Well, time to see if I'm going to get this game. Let's see some. Oh, fuck. There we go. Let's see before you buy first.
Hey, and we're back with another episode of Before You Buy, that show where we give you some straight up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. As usual, it's me, Jake, and hello. This is the first Before You Buy of 2024. Hope you guys are doing well. Thanks for still coming around. Today we're talking about Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. The Prince of Persia franchise is back, sorta. You know, you're not the prince. This is an all-new adventure set in Persian mythology, and it's actually really great. A nice, welcome surprise for January, like a good way to start the year.
Yeah, because a lot of people were so negative about this game because of the 2D side-scroller perspective not being a 3D like the old ones before the old ones. But yeah, this looked kind of good when I first saw it for the first time.
If you like classic Prince of Persia or Metroidvanias. And just so you know, before we get into it, we've been playing a review copy from Ubisoft, and this footage here is spoiler-free. Anything story you see here is just in the first few hours. And also, this footage was captured on PS5, but our capture equipment broke last minute right before making this video, so the quality is going to be a bit lower. I apologize. I gotta love capture cards. I feel like they all break. They're all faulty, especially from that one company. Anyway, this is an interesting game. I was skeptical because it looked like a spin-off or a reboot into something else. You know, like I said, you're not the classic Prince of Persia. Here, you're an immortal, a kind of badass warrior avenger, part of a group with the whole plot centered around Persian myth and fantasy. At first, I was like, why this instead of a mainline Prince of Persia game? Well, after playing Lost Crown, I actually think that this can be a good direction for the series, gameplay-wise. It feels different than your average Ubisoft game.
It's going back to the roots of what it was before, a 2D side-scroller game. Makes sense.
Not an endless open world. It's just an enjoyable, challenging adventure that comes in at a lesser price and will take you like 20 to 30 hours, depending on how you play. Now, the main character, the player character, is Sargon, a young, powerful badass tasked with rescuing a kidnapped prince in an ancient Persia. It's a fantasy world. There are monsters, creatures.
Yeah, that look exactly like how he did the animation
Player
in the
character
old
is Sargon,
3D games.
a young, powerful badass tasked with rescuing a kidnapped prince in an ancient Persia. It's a fantasy world. There are monsters, creatures, gods. He's super powered. He can kind of go Super Saiyan. You go with it. You navigate 2D planes, progressing through a story and unlocking abilities in both combat and traversal that allow you to get to new areas of the map and journey further. The character is fast with sprints and slides and dashes, and more you get throughout the game, and you can die in just a couple of hits or falling into a spike trap, and it can all be nice and challenging. Thankfully, the game gives you lots of difficulty modes and accessibility options to get the difficulty however you really want it. The freedom of choice is nice here. And the game can be nice and challenging, particularly with the combat. You could slide under characters, you could do strikes, charged hits, you could hit them up in the air, juggle them, slam them back down, use some ranged attacks. You can also build up a kind of super meter and spend it on two mapped unlockable special attacks like a healing bubble, a big powerful hit, a massive ranged blast, stuff like that. It all just feels incredibly smooth and responsive. Like, not once did I fiddle with the controls or have any issues at all, other than just my own skill or lack thereof. There's like one frequent use ability mapped to R3, you know, or clicking the right stick that felt a little weird, but otherwise, buttery smooth controls and the gameplay itself super smooth and tight. And for those special abilities you spend a meter on, there are some cool ones to unlock, but I did find myself kind of just taking the ones I liked early on and stuck with them for a lot of the game. You can I buried the lead here. You can also parry certain attacks. The parry window is very small, sometimes brutally so, but when you get it, it feels so good and satisfying, especially because when certain enemies do a special attack, if you parry that one just right, you'll get an instant kill with a really cool in-game finisher animation. The clang of a parry, the flash, All of it is really well done and ties into what I said before, super smooth, buttery gameplay. And, with those finishing animations and that stuff, this game oozes with style in the presentation. Now, on the surface, it might look a little generic, some of the characters, yeah. And as the story as a whole didn't really do too much for me personally, that might be a negative for some people, but at the very least, when the action ramps up, whether it be a big cutscene or the climax or like a mid phase of a boss battle, the presentation and style more than makes up for those drawbacks, the story drawbacks for me. Like the way Sargon will shout or start glowing blue and powering up, and how the camera pans and speeds up as he flings into action. The background turns a solid color. The game uses all these brilliant anime-inspired tricks to really make things look and feel cool and just like exciting as hell. As for the Metroidvania exploration elements, the base of it is what you'd expect, lots of different kinds of biomes you work through, some better than others, with their own dangers and enemy types and puzzles. Enemy types I really enjoy. Every enemy is dangerous. You have to pay attention, so and the best ones force you to move around the environment and choose the proper attack direction and the right ability for the job. The platforming, though, I absolutely love, dude. It's like an old school Prince of Persia through and through. You're running, you're jumping, you're dashing, you're avoiding booby traps and spike pits and spinning blades. It's perfect and challenging and satisfying. It gets even better as...
Which is interesting, because usually games like this either do the combat really well or the platform really very well, not both. There are very few games like this that they actually does do platforming and combat very well, which is good.
As it goes with more abilities and time manipulation, because this is still like a Prince of Persia game. Some of the trickier platforming and environment puzzles in this game kind of pushed my simple brain, and I really like that. I could see some people getting a little frustrated with some of this. It can be a lot to wrap your head around. Maybe it was just me, but like some of the time manipulation stuff in terms of planning things out, sequencing things out while also trying to figure out a puzzle, and sometimes also avoid danger or enemies at the same time, it can be a lot. I really like it, but just like heads up, there are some spots here that had me like, ooh, squeezing my controller. And you're encouraged to explore, because a lot of times the game will like make you go somewhere, you unlock something, and then to get to the next part of the game, you have to backtrack to the beginning of the game and open up a new area, that type of stuff. But on the side, you're encouraged to explore and revisit in that Metroidvania style to find new stuff, hidden secrets, and also there are some side quests. The side quests are mostly like someone telling you to go collect something, but usually they open up and then you don't really get to them until later on when the abilities and the map really opens up, but still they work. You're really just going around to try and find stuff and better your character, right? There are collectibles that give you a bit of reading, and they weren't too exciting, but there are also different currencies and items of different rarity to spend at a shop and at a mythical weapons
rarity
forge. So you're like increasing your attack power, your capacities, you're buying different trinkets that will help you, stuff like that. And as you progress, you do find and also buy these charms for your necklace that can stack to give you a bit like a poison resistance, an extra hit in your melee combo, faster special attack charging, and some of these can get really interesting. It's a little bit like a light character build, because the capacity of your necklace only has so much, and some of these little medallions will take up more slots than others. So you have some options, and some of them can also just help make the game a little bit easier if you're struggling too. And when you're exploring, there's a map that's pretty easy to read and it's accessible quickly. It's pretty instant, which is good. Standard stuff in a Metroidvania game, you need that. If you're used to the map in the more recent like Metroid Dread, there's that. But here, the game gives you an ability to, at any time in a room, hit a button, like it's like down on the D-pad, that takes a screenshot of the room in game and saves it to be highlighted on that part of the map. So if there's like a hidden chest up high that you can't reach yet, hit a button and then the game instantly saves a little screenshot right onto your map that's easy to find later on. Like you can hover over it so you can like keep track of things. It's a really solid feature, and it sounds like it's not a big deal, but it's very cool and useful.
Yeah, and it almost sounds like that's something that you might forget doing after a while. Let's see. Maybe not.
Metroidvania nerds are gonna really like how this is implemented. So really, if you can't tell, I have a lot of good things to say about this one. It's a genre where there are definitely plenty of entries out there. There are a lot of modern Metroidvania games, and I don't know if this is the best one, but it somehow just feels simple and fresh. The story, again, really a downer for me personally. Not bad, just a bit forgettable in a lot of chunks. It has a lot of cool ideas, and it's clearly excited about its lore, but doesn't quite land with all of it. And I think that's the big negative of the game, but that's just for me. You might enjoy it a little bit more. Sargon as a character is pretty appealing, so there's aspects of it, but yeah, the gameplay is the best thing about this whole thing. It's buttery smooth, fun, challenging. The action and platforming is top notch, and I had fun. That's the bottom line. I'd love to see this style of game, like this style of gameplay here, this Prince of Persia combat, this platforming, this movement, continue moving forward. I'd love to see more Prince of Persia Lost Crown games after this game. And that's a good feeling. And again, a pretty good way to start a gaming year. But of course, this is a before you buy. You know how this goes by now. I give you some pros, some cons, and some personal opinion. So now
Okay. That was pretty positive video. Let's see who else has something else to say. Let's see over here. Let's check GameSpot real quick.
Within its long history, Prince of Persia has always been better at leading than following. Its original trailblazing release in 1989 set a new standard for fluid animation and death-defying platforming, and the acclaimed Sands of Time was deservedly praised for its innovative parkour-inspired 3D traversal. On the other hand, series entries that attempt to chase trends like the gritty Warrior Within have been less than successful. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is the series' first attempt at a modernized Metroidvania, which could have easily fallen into the category of competent imitators. But with impactful combat, silky platforming, and innovative exploration mechanics, this latest Prince of Persia makes the series a leader in its class once again.
Yep, so far same thing, pretty good. 18 hours. Okay.
Breaking with tradition, the eponymous prince in this case is not actually the player character himself. Instead, you play as Sargon, the youngest member of the Immortals, a sort of Persian royal guard by way of Avengers-like superheroes. When a member of your clan betrays the order by kidnapping the prince and taking him to the mysterious and cursed Mount Koth, the Immortals give chase to rescue him. The setting allows the story to pay homage to Persian mythology like the benevolent god Simorgh, but this is a very stylized take that doesn't seem concerned with meticulously setting itself at any specific point in history. It's a pastiche that blends history and mythology with hyper-stylized elements like anime and comic books.
Anime!
Mount Koth is an elaborate setting for the Lost Crown, encompassing ancient temples, catacombs, royal libraries, caverns, and more. It was once the heart of the kingdom, but has fallen into despair following the death of the wise King Darius. And as a cursed mountain, the few remaining inhabitants talk as if they've been living outside of the sequential flow of time, frequently referencing things that happened either too long ago or not yet.
So much time has passed.
What? You only got here last night?
This narrative supports the three main pillars of gameplay: combat, platforming, and puzzle solving. Mount Koth is rife with monsters and the shambling remains of guards, and the lore establishes that it was built with death traps and puzzles to keep out invaders and protect the king. What's most striking about these pillars is while each one are refined and essential pieces in themselves, the blend of all three together lets you flex different gameplay muscles as you switch from combat to platforming to puzzles at a brisk pace. Combat is snappy and challenging, giving you a suite of attacks, dodges, and parries, and then slowly peppering in new combat abilities, letting you find innovative ways to incorporate your traversal skills into your ever-expanding arsenal. What begins as a fairly simple 1-2-3 timed combo system with some light parrying quickly turns into an acrobatic tour de force as you manage the battlefield with deadly grace. Boss battles are massive spectacles, ranging from chipping at enormous beasts to dueling formidable human foes with anime-inspired flourishes for your special attacks. Combat factors heavily into your equipment system, a necklace of amulets that let you customize Sargon to your liking in various ways, but primarily in the context of combat. You can expand the necklace with collectibles to equip more amulets, and I found it flexible enough to accommodate a wide array of playstyles, accenting your strengths and smoothing over your weaknesses. Movement is similarly nuanced and natural. As you increase your abilities, you become more acrobatic and airborne until the point that you can clear a room while barely touching the ground. The platforming feels so natural, in fact, that it finds the elusive sweet spot of Metroidvanias where you sometimes aren't sure if you need to find another ability or if you can just get good enough to pull off a platforming challenge already. The challenges rise to meet your newfound agility, with the regular appearance of breathless platforming rooms that require pitch-perfect timing to every nimble leap and dodge. I say the word breathless literally, as I often found myself realizing I had unconsciously held my breath while making my way through one. Many of these are optional, with a hidden piece of specialized currency tucked into the hardest part of an area. That currency, called Xerxes, will fly back to its original location if you die, and only becomes yours to keep if you make it through the challenge and successfully touch safe ground again. It's too bad that these challenge coins have fairly limited utility in the game's economy, as they're mostly reserved for a single vendor with only a few appealing baubles.
I only accept Xerxes. Don't you try giving me crystals.
What's wrong with crystals,
the puzzles
man?
are the weakest of the three pillars, but only barely. They're primarily an extension of the platforming, because even once you know the solution, you'll often need to rely on precision timing and nimble reflexes to solve them. I never struggled with a solution enough to feel frustrated by not understanding it, but I did occasionally get annoyed when I had to repeatedly attempt to execute the solution I had already figured out. All of this would be for nothing if exploring the location, the heart of any Metroidvania, weren't fun and engaging on its own terms. But the setting is fantastic, with imaginative, varied biomes that look gorgeous and vibrant. From majestic man-made structures to earthy caverns accented with bright crystalline patterns, and even a wrecked shipyard frozen in time, it's a constant joy to explore a new area, discover new powers, and re-explore to find hidden pockets that you left behind before. And it's in this facet, the Metroidvania exploration, that Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown finds the most room for innovation. Chief among these is memory shards, a reusable resource that maps a single button press to taking a screenshot of your current location and marking its location on your map. In a genre defined by constantly presenting you with doors that you can't yet reach, this is an absolute game changer. It emulates the feeling of drawing your own maps on the back of a game manual and taking notes on the symbols you see, but modernized and automated in a way that feels clean and intuitive. You can expand your stock of memory shards by finding collectibles in the open world, letting the exploration aspect feed back into itself. The memory shard system is helpful without feeling over-generous, which is true for many of the Lost Crown's quality of life features. Save points are marked by whack-whack trees, and you can see their ethereal glowing trails as you get close to help subtly guide you toward them. A guided option will point you in the right direction of your next story objective, or let you know if the gate is closed off with your current abilities, but it doesn't hold your hand, so you still feel the joy of exploring. You can buy maps of new areas for a token price, but you can also simply abstain and explore to fill out the map yourself. The combat difficulty is similarly flexible, composed of recommended rookie, warrior, hero, and immortal difficulty settings, along with sliders for various combat elements. You can turn enemy damage or your own up or down, extend your parry or dodge timing, and more to your liking. All of it seems made to meet where you are without compromising what makes it feel engaging and active. All of this is in service to a story that has compelling characters and some interesting ideas, but often becomes too muddied for its own good. The supernatural setting of Mount Koth lets the story imply a lot of mysterious questions, without many clear answers about how time works here, and what exactly is happening, so it often feels as if magic is being treated like a crutch. Sargon is a dynamic and relatable hero, and the ultimate villain is sympathetic, but many of the tertiary characters are barely developed or even disappear almost entirely. The writing is best in the moments when it's as hyper-stylized as the action, as opposed to those where it ventures into over-seriousness. I cared about these characters, and I'd like to see more of them, but the plot itself was less compelling. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown feels like a sea change for the long-running series, and almost as dramatic the shift as Sands of Time was when it took the classic platformer series into 3D. This new genre debut is so confident and impeccably crafted that this should simply be the identity of Prince of Persia for the foreseeable future.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay, that's 2 for 2. 2 for 2. Oh boy. And it looks like I'm going to be playing this game. Let's see. Who else? Sure, IGN, what do you have to tell me?
I fell in love with Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time way back in 2003. It helped redefine 3D action games with a clever rewind ability that enhanced its environmental puzzles and fast acrobatic combat.
Same footage.
While the odds saw a bunch of sequels with similar elements,
like
none
exactly
ever
the
quite
same
hit
footage.
the same heights, and the 2010s were a parched desert for the series. But like an oasis, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown finally nails what I loved about those classic Prince of Persia games. And it does so by placing the series' best ideas within a 2D Metroidvania framework that calls back to the roots of the 1989 original.
Your life ends here.
The Lost Crown excels in both the elements that make for a great Prince of Persia: platforming and combat. By bringing the whole game to a 2D viewpoint, it's able to hone in on precise, snappy controls that always feel great, and you can always see exactly what you need to do. Like the Sands of Time and 2009's Prince of Persia reboot, The Lost Crown constitutes a reimagining of the series, striking out in its own direction but maintaining some familiarity.
Oh right, the reboot, I almost forgot
The
about that
enticing
game.
basics are the same. As a quick, acrobatic protagonist, you explore a massive, semi-ruined location covered in deadly traps and filled with various soldiers and monsters you must overcome with strength and cunning. And, of course, time shenanigans are afoot.
What is this sorcery?
The similarities end there, though, as The Lost Crown tells a new story based on Persian mythology, leaning into an adventure filled with cool characters that are often pretty interesting, although the plot can get tripped up in its details and delivery as you explore the maze-like map.
Good gameplay, bad plot.
At the heart of the tale are the Immortals, a group of 7 nearly superheroic warriors dispatched to the legendary Mount Kaf to rescue the kidnapped Prince of Persia. You play as Sargon, the youngest and most brash of the group. His struggles both with proving his place among the Immortals and with chasing down his mentor, who is responsible for the kidnapping, make him a compelling character throughout the twisty, though somewhat predictable journey.
What is this all about?
I wasn't planning on killing you, Sargon. Stay out of this.
Sargon is a capable fighter from the start, and the fact that you have plenty of tools in combat right away is a huge part of why it works so well. Fighting enemies is as compelling as exploring the sprawling map, thanks to combat that emphasizes speed, reaction time, and pressing your advantage. Sargon's speed is his greatest strength, and even basic enemies hit hard enough that you always need to be reading their movement. The threat that most enemies present kept every battle exciting and important across my 25 hours in Mount Kaf, even on the normal difficulty mode. And the fun comes from learning to master everything at your disposal. One of the Lost Crown's best ideas is to increase its focus on melee action beyond what you might expect from a typical Metroidvania. Think almost Sekiro meets Devil May Cry. Your focus in fights is on creating and maintaining combos that can give you an advantage. Kicking smaller enemies into the air allows you to juggle them, while you can sneak behind larger enemies to evade their blows. In addition to regular strikes, upward and downward attacks, and aerial maneuvers, Sargon also has moves that follow from dodges and slides, and heavier attacks that can be charged up or changed depending on when you execute them within a chain. All of his attacks are simple and easy to execute, but still made him feel like a fierce warrior at all times, especially as I learned how to read opponents and pull off combos that allowed me to absolutely dominate them. Adding to the thrill is the fact that combat is so damn stylish. Sargon and the other immortals who appear as NPCs zip across battlefields at impossible speeds as bright colors splash over the background. Parrying specific powerful attacks even triggers a quick execution cutscene that eliminates regular enemies outright. Miss a parry, however, and the Lost Crown will show you just how bad you messed up. Flashy sequences also mark Sargon's unlockable Athra Surge abilities, which have to be charged up by damaging enemies. These let you do things like throw several foes into the air at once, create a healing field, or fire a hugely powerful arrow with flare. Never is combat better than in boss battles though. All the same rules of regular battles apply, with attacks that can be parried and some that trigger counters to land a huge cinematic hit. But bosses all have similar tools to your own, like unparryable moves and even their own Athra abilities that you have to learn and avoid. One boss trounced me again and again by snagging me with his Kratos-like chain weapon. Every time I failed to link my jumps together to avoid it, I got humiliated by a killer cutscene as he smashed me into the ground with a lightning strike-like blast of energy.
Sounds like a skill issue.
These moments come across like gods clashing, and the Lost Crown's bosses having abilities similar to yours makes them feel like true contests of skill. The other half of the Lost Crown is its platforming gauntlet. As with combat, platforming is consistently excellent. Most of the abilities you'll unlock while making your way through Mount Koth will be familiar to Metroidvania fans. Staples like a double jump, a mid-air dash, and a grapple. With its platforming, the Lost Crown doesn't break the mold, but it does execute everything it attempts exceptionally well. Some really great, challenging level design will put you through your paces, dodging swinging blades and avoiding spikes, and the obstacles you face never feel cheap or frustrating. The Lost Crown does discard the time rewinding power that has defined most of the Prince of Persia games. Instead, when you fail a platforming section, you're just returned to the last chunk of solid ground you touched with a little damage. It isn't as thematically neat, but it is a functionally quicker, cleaner approach to allowing you to adjust for your errors. It's rare that a platforming section feels too long or is annoying to repeat, since you can just make additional attempts almost instantly, and you can only really suffer consequences when you fully run out of health. Mount Koth itself is a big map with a lot of impressive areas. Again, the ideas at play here aren't rewriting the Metroidvania playbook, but they serve very well to provide a lot of variety and interesting obstacles. Each area has its own vibes, enemies, and ideas, like an underground pirate harbor filled with explosives and ambushes, and an academy area where keeping quiet is necessary to avoid a towering, overzealous, blind librarian. You'll revisit each location over and over again as you unlock new abilities, and they're all different enough that return trips remain interesting even late into the campaign. The Lost Crown also lets you snap a photo of any spot where you see something you can't currently reach or a puzzle you don't yet understand, which adds the image to your map. It's a brilliant system that every Metroidvania should emulate, as it encourages you to find everything Mount Koth has to offer and cuts down on the irritating need to scour every single corner. My favorite location was a sea battle frozen in time, where you can walk on waves mid-crash. As you progress, you eventually restart time for part of the area, forcing you to travel through the stormy battle even as other parts of the location are still frozen, creating a very cool effect. But it was elements like this that made me wish The Lost Crown leaned harder into its broken flow of time premise, which is more something characters talk about than something that actually happens on screen. Characters will mention seeing different versions of the Immortals, or even claim they've interacted with Sargon before you've met them throughout the story. But The Lost Crown doesn't fully explore these fascinating ideas. In fact, at points, it instead felt like I had outright missed something.
Hours for you, days for me, years for Ardashir's man.
The same is true of one of the Lost Crown's side characters, who disappeared at one point, never to be seen again, and I had one minor side quest that never seemed to advance correctly. Additionally, the relatively open, interconnected world of Mount Kaf sometimes plays against the story that takes place within it, where taking a certain path can cause you to miss events or reach them slightly out of order. Even after I finished, the whole tale seemed to have a few lingering plot holes.
You're still like a stone skipping across the water.
As much as I liked the characters throughout, its conclusion was somewhat unsatisfying due to what seemed like missing pieces. Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown captures not only what made games such as The Sands of Time so good, but it irons out a lot of the little issues that plagued the 3D games in this series by opting for a 2D perspective, and it owns that choice. It also works extremely well as a traditional Metroidvania, sticking with tried and true elements of the genre, but executing them with precision. The story can feel a bit jumbled at times, but it's the fast and fun combat system, the tight and satisfying controls, and the stylish look and feel that elevates Sargon's journey and makes The Lost Crown a worthy successor to the best of the Prince of Persia legacy. For more recent Metroidvanias, check out our review of The Last Faith or Cookie.
Yep, I am definitely gonna buy this game. I'm gonna play it tomorrow. 100%. Okay. I guess I'll be back